The restaurant glowed with soft candlelight, the kind that makes every face look warmer, every table feel more intimate. I sat across from Mark, my heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Life had pulled us in different directions, but tonight felt like ours again. I lifted my glass of wine, savoring the taste and the atmosphere, letting myself believe we were finding our rhythm. The low hum of conversations around us wrapped me in comfort. This wasn't just dinner. It felt like a promise. Mark leaned closer, asking about my day with a smile that almost disarmed me. I noticed the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his laugh softened his whole face, and for a moment, I let my guard down. His hand brushed mine across the table, and I clung to that touch like a lifeline. Maybe we were repairing what had been slipping through our fingers. I imagined dessert, a stroll under the city lights, maybe even some closeness at home. Fragile, yes, but possible. Then it happened. His phone buzzed against the table, shattering the fragile bubble I had wrapped around us. The screen lit up in the dim light, and without meaning to, my eyes landed on it. A picture of a messy bed, sheets twisted, followed by words that made my blood run cold. Miss you already. Last night was unforgettable. My chest tightened, my stomach lurched. In an instant, the sweetness of the evening soured into something sharp and bitter I couldn't swallow. I froze, glass still in my hand, as if moving might make the words disappear. My throat tightened, but I forced my face to stay calm, pretending nothing had happened. Mark's eyes flicked up at me, maybe sensing my sudden stillness, and in that moment, I realized he didn't know I'd seen. The betrayal buzzed in my ears louder than the clinking of silverware. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers right then and there. But another part, the colder part, decided to wait. I leaned back in my chair, steadying my breath, trying to collect myself while my insides twisted. "Mark, who just texted you?" I asked, my voice trembling but measured. He blinked quickly, shoved his phone face down, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's work. Nothing important." His answer hung between us, heavy and false. I studied him, the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers drummed nervously against the tablecloth. He was lying, and we both knew it. "Work sends you pictures of beds?" I pressed, my tone sharper now, though I tried to keep my composure. His eyes widened, and for a second he stammered, caught between excuses. "You must have misread," he muttered, his voice cracking just enough to betray him. "It's not what you think." Oh, but I knew exactly what it was. That message was no mistake, no misunderstanding. It was a confession wrapped in pixels, handed to me like a dagger in the middle of our dinner. I sat there, every muscle in my body screaming to explode, yet I forced a smile that didn't belong to me. I picked up my fork, cutting into food I could no longer taste, chewing just to keep myself from shaking. Around us, waiters carried trays, couples laughed, glasses clinked. To anyone watching, we looked like a normal pair sharing a pleasant evening. But inside me, something cracked. Quietly, almost invisibly, like glass under pressure. And once that crack began, it wouldn't stop spreading. Mark cleared his throat, trying to redirect the night with small talk. "The wine's good, isn't it?" he said, his voice too bright, too rehearsed. I nodded slowly, letting him think I was swallowing his story, though my thoughts churned. Every word he spoke felt like a performance, each smile another mask layered over betrayal. I wondered how long he'd been playing me, how many dinners, how many moments had been lies. The weight of it all pressed down, but so did a new, sharper resolve. I decided right then not to give him the satisfaction of a scene. No, he wouldn't get that from me. I'd let him think he'd gotten away with it, let him believe his secret was still intact. But in the shadows of my silence, I was already planning. Because that message wasn't just a mistake, it was a door opening, and I had no intention of letting it close again. Not until I walked through it and made sure he understood exactly what it had cost me. The ride home felt endless, though neither of us said much. Mark hummed along with the radio like nothing had happened, while I stared out the window, my reflection in the glass colder than I remembered. I clenched my hands in my lap, rehearsing the questions I wanted to hurl at him, then swallowing them back down. He thought my silence meant surrender. He thought I was too fragile to face the truth. But the truth had already carved itself into me, and I wasn't about to let it go. When we finally walked through the door, he kicked off his shoes, loosened his tie, and acted as if the evening had been uneventful. I followed him with steady steps, watching every move. I waited until he went to the kitchen for a drink, then picked up his phone from the counter. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the fire burning inside me. The photo was gone, deleted. He had cleaned up the mess he thought I couldn't handle, but he forgot one thing. I'd already seen it. He came back, glass in hand, and froze when he saw me holding the phone. "So," I said, my voice low but sharp, "you deleted the photo? But you forgot I saw it first." His face hardened instantly, the charm slipping away like a mask cracked down the middle. "Why are you going through my phone?" he snapped, his tone dripping with accusation. "Don't you trust me?" The audacity of it almost made me laugh. He wanted to twist this, to turn me into the villain. But I wasn't playing that role. Not tonight. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I held his gaze without flinching. "Don't twist this around," I shot back, my voice firmer now. "While I sat across from you at dinner, she was texting you from our bed." The word bed felt heavy, bitter, and deliberate. Mark's jaw tightened, his hand gripping the glass so hard I thought it might shatter. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. The evidence wasn't just digital, it was etched in his reaction, in his fear of being exposed. He set the glass down, his tone suddenly cooler, more calculated. "Sophia," he said slowly, almost condescending, "maybe this marriage isn't working anymore." The words sliced through me, each one a dagger aimed at the woman who had sacrificed, forgiven, and tried to rebuild. For a split second, I felt my chest cave in, the air knocked out of me. He wasn't even fighting for us. He was discarding me, like I was the burden, not his betrayal. That's when something inside me shifted from pain to steel. I looked at him, my heart breaking, but my mind sharpening. His betrayal had gutted me, but his cold dismissal lit a fire I hadn't felt before. If he wanted out, then fine. But he wouldn't walk away unscathed. I wouldn't let him rewrite the story to make me the fool. That night, as he walked away from me, muttering excuses and half-truths, I made myself a quiet promise. If he thought he had the upper hand, he was about to learn otherwise. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. Mark slept beside me, or at least pretended to, his breathing heavy and even. I wanted to reach over, to shake him awake and demand the full truth, but I held back. He had already shown me who he was. My tears burned, sliding down into my hair. But even through the ache, one thought anchored me. He wasn't going to get away with this. I thought back to the years we'd built together, the sacrifices, the late nights I'd spent waiting for him, the way I'd defended him when others doubted. All of it suddenly felt like bricks in a house he had set on fire. But instead of running from the flames, I decided I'd learn to use them. The woman he thought was fragile, naive, too trusting, that woman was gone. In her place was someone far more dangerous. Me, with clarity sharper than I'd ever had before. As dawn crept through the blinds, I rolled onto my side, studying his profile in the pale light. He looked peaceful, unaware that everything had shifted. My chest still ached, but beneath the pain, a strange calm settled in. He might think the mask was still intact, that his secret was buried with that deleted photo. But I had already seen the cracks, and through those cracks, I was ready to dig until the whole thing collapsed. The days that followed were a masterclass in silence. I smiled when I needed to, cooked dinner, laughed at his half-hearted jokes. But inside, I was watching, waiting. If Mark thought his little secret would stay hidden, he underestimated me. I started with the basics, his phone records, the late-night calls that stretched far longer than any work emergency ever should. Each number, each timestamp painted a picture clearer than words could. He wasn't just lying, he was sloppy. Then came the bank statements. Dinners at places we'd never been together, hotel charges in cities he claimed he'd visited for meetings. I combed through every line like a detective piecing together a crime scene, and with each discovery, the sting dulled and turned into something sharper. Proof, evidence, ammunition. He had written his betrayal into receipts and credit card swipes, and I was collecting every last one. But the jackpot came when I remembered the family laptop. Mark had synced his messages to it months ago and forgot. Sitting there in the glow of the screen, my heart pounded as I opened the folder. And there it was. Messages dripping with intimacy, snapshots of hotel rooms, the same bed I'd seen in that first photo. Every detail was spelled out, like he'd wanted me to find it. I leaned back, breath shaking, but this time, it wasn't grief I felt. It was resolve. I printed everything, texts, receipts, call logs, slipping them neatly into a folder I kept hidden in the back of my closet. Each page felt like both a wound and a weapon, cutting me but arming me at the same time. I wasn't rushing into a fight. No, I wanted this to be airtight, undeniable. I wanted him cornered with no room to twist the truth. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about shouting. It was about precision. One evening, over coffee at Claire's kitchen table, I finally let someone in on the storm I was carrying. "He doesn't even hide it well," I whispered, sliding the receipts across to her. Claire's eyes widened, fury flashing in them like sparks. "Sophia, you have everything you need to end him. Don't let him walk away clean." Hearing her say it out loud felt like gasoline to the fire I'd been tending. She wasn't just my friend, she was my witness, my anchor. I gripped the edge of the table, my voice steady even as my pulse raced. "I won't," I told her, my jaw tight. He embarrassed me in public. He sat across from me at dinner while she texted him from our bed. Now I'll return the favor. Claire reached across and took my hand, her grip firm, her eyes fierce. In that moment, I wasn't just a wife betrayed. I was a woman preparing for war. Nights became my battlefield. While Mark snored in bed, I sat in the glow of the laptop, scrolling through every thread, every line of their secret world. Her name appeared again and again, dripping with endearments that once belonged to me. The sting was sharp at first, but with each word I read, the pain hardened into strategy. I wasn't just uncovering his affair. I was building the stage where he'd be forced to perform the truth. There were moments when doubt tried to creep in, whispering that maybe I should just leave quietly, spare myself the drama. But then I'd see another photo, another hotel charge, another smug little "miss you already." And that doubt dissolved into clarity. Walking away silently would mean giving him freedom without consequence. No, he needed to feel the weight of every betrayal, the sting of exposure in the very places he thought he was untouchable. By the time my folder was thick with proof, I no longer trembled when I touched it. Instead, I felt calm, almost frighteningly so. I had transformed my heartbreak into evidence, my humiliation into leverage. And while Mark went on with his charade, blissfully unaware, I was already plotting the perfect stage for his downfall. All that was left was the moment to strike, and I knew exactly when and where it would happen. The invitation to the family dinner arrived just as I'd been waiting for the right opportunity. Mark's parents were hosting. His siblings and colleagues would be there, an audience he couldn't charm his way out of. When he handed me the envelope, smiling like nothing was wrong, I smiled back and accepted. Inside, though, my pulse quickened. This was it. The night where his double life would unravel in front of everyone he cared about. I prepared carefully, slipping the folder of evidence into my bag like a secret weapon. The night of the dinner, I dressed with precision. Elegant, composed, every detail deliberate. If he expected me to crumble, I'd give him poise instead. As we drove to his parents' house, he made small talk, humming along with the radio, unaware of the storm sitting quietly beside him. I answered with nods, my mind rehearsing every word I planned to deliver. When we walked into the dining room, the air was warm with the smell of roast and the hum of conversation. His family greeted us with hugs, smiles, polite chatter. I returned their warmth, all while holding a steady mask over the truth I carried. I sat down beside Mark at the long table, my hands folded neatly in my lap. No one could see it yet, but this was no ordinary dinner. Tonight, I was both guest and executioner. The clinking of silverware and polite laughter filled the room, but all I could hear was the steady beat of my own heart. Mark sat beside me, leaning in to tell his brother a joke, oblivious to the trap tightening around him. I waited, patient, biding my time as the courses came and went. Every smile I offered, every nod, was a thread in the mask I wore. He had humiliated me over dinner once. I was about to return the favor, and mine would leave scars. Halfway through the main course, I set down my fork and reached calmly into my bag. The room buzzed with conversation, no one noticing until the sound of paper sliding across the table caught their attention. I stood, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the chatter. "Mark," I said, projecting just enough to command the room, "remember when you told me it was just work?" All eyes turned to me, forks frozen midair, curiosity sparking. He looked up, startled, his face paling. "Sophia, sit down," he hissed under his breath, panic flickering in his eyes. But I wasn't sitting. I lifted the printed photos and messages, laying them out like cards in a game he was destined to lose. "Because here's the kind of work you've been doing," I announced, my voice unwavering. Gasps rippled around the table, his mother's hand flying to her mouth, his brother's face hardening in disbelief. Mark's mask was crumbling in real time, and everyone was watching. Mark's voice cracked as he reached across the table, trying to grab the papers. "Sophia, stop! This isn't the place!" His panic only fueled me. I pulled the folder back and gave him a smile so calm it must have terrified him. "The place?" I repeated, my tone edged with steel. "You humiliated me at dinner with your mistress's texts. Now everyone deserves to see who you really are." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. His mother's voice trembled. "Mark, is this true?" Her question sliced through the air, each word like a nail in the coffin of his reputation. Mark's face reddened, his mouth opening and closing as he scrambled for excuses. He muttered about misunderstandings, about me being overly emotional, but the evidence lay bare on the linen tablecloth. His siblings stared in shock. His colleagues whispered behind their hands. The fortress he had built, his image, his charm, was collapsing right in front of them. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My power was in my composure, in the fact that I had turned his lies into undeniable truth. With every second that passed, the shame burned deeper into him, and I let it. Finally, I straightened my shoulders, folded the remaining papers, and slipped them back into my bag. I didn't storm out. I walked with quiet grace, leaving the table in stunned silence. The damage was done. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the dinner, I woke with a strange calmness in my chest. The storm had already torn through, and all that was left was clarity. Mark shuffled around the kitchen, avoiding my eyes, his movements jittery and small. He hadn't said a word since the night before, but he didn't need to. His silence was an admission, and I no longer cared to hear his excuses. I had bigger plans that involved ending this on my terms. By mid-morning, I was sitting in a polished office, a folder of evidence resting on the lawyer's desk. The air smelled faintly of leather and fresh coffee, grounding me as I leaned back in the chair. "With this much proof, Sophia," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses as he flipped through the pages, "the court will favor you." I nodded, steady, resolute. This wasn't about revenge in the courtroom sense. It was about securing what I deserved after years of lies. Mark called my name from the doorway when I returned home, his voice desperate. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped, a man suddenly aware of everything he was about to lose. "Please," he whispered, "I made a mistake. Don't do this." For a flicker of a second, I saw the man I once loved, but the image dissolved as quickly as it came. He hadn't made one mistake. He had built a life of them, and now the bill was due. I set my bag down slowly, studying him the way you'd study a stranger. "You thought you could live a double life," I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "But you can't have both. And now you'll lose them." His lips parted, searching for words that would soften me, but I'd already heard every excuse, every lie. There was no apology that could stitch back what he'd shredded. He reached out, his hands trembling, but I stepped back. The distance between us wasn't just physical. It was a canyon carved by betrayal. I thought about the years I had given, the trust I had poured into him like water into a cracked vase. No matter how much I tried, it could never hold. "I'm done patching holes," I told him, and the finality in my tone made his shoulders sink. For once, he had no power here. Later that night, I lay in bed alone, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I should have felt empty, but instead, there was a strange peace settling into me. I wasn't naive anymore, wasn't clinging to what once was. The papers were in motion, the evidence airtight, the outcome certain. He might beg, he might rage, but none of it mattered now. My future was no longer tied to his deception. It was mine to claim. The following week, I walked back into my lawyer's office, papers signed, decisions sealed. Each signature felt like a release, as if I was cutting away the last strings that tied me to him. When I looked up, the lawyer gave me a reassuring nod. "You've done the hard part," he said softly. I smiled faintly, realizing he was right. The hardest part wasn't leaving Mark. It was letting go of the woman who once believed his lies. At home, Mark was waiting, slouched on the couch, his face hollow. "Sophia," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "don't do this to me." I stood in the doorway, holding my purse, feeling the weight of his words roll off me like water off stone. "I'm not doing this to you," I answered quietly. "You did this to us." His mouth opened, but no sound came. For the first time, he was speechless, and I savored it. Walking upstairs, I felt taller than I had in years. Each step carried me further from the shadows of betrayal and closer to the life I was reclaiming. In the stillness of my room, I opened the window, letting the cool night air wash over me. The chapter with Mark was closing, but the story of me, stronger, sharper, freer, was only just beginning. And deep down, I knew his downfall was the beginning of my rise. Months later, I found myself back at the same restaurant where it all began. But this time, the weight in my chest was gone. I wasn't sitting across from lies and betrayal. I was surrounded by friends, their laughter filling the air like music. The flicker of candlelight no longer mocked me. It warmed me. I raised my glass, the clinking of crystal echoing against the walls, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Halfway through dessert, My phone buzzed on the table. For a moment, my heart jolted, an echo of that night. But when I looked down, a smile spread across my face. It was a simple reminder. My spa retreat was booked, a gift to myself with the settlement money he thought I'd never claim. The message was short, ordinary, yet it carried a weight no one else at the table understood. It wasn't just a reminder. It was proof of my new beginning. Claire leaned toward me, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Do you ever think about him anymore?" she asked, her voice soft, almost cautious. I lifted my glass, catching the light, and let out a laugh that was lighter than I remembered myself capable of. Only when I remember that the best message I ever got was hers. It set me free. The table erupted in cheers, glasses raised, and I felt it deep in my bones. I wasn't just surviving, I was finally living. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into sunlight after years of living in shadows. I filled my days with things I'd once pushed aside: painting, yoga, long walks by the river with Claire. Even the simplest rituals, like brewing my morning coffee or reading on the porch, felt sacred now. They weren't just routines. They were reminders that I had survived, rebuilt, and chosen myself over his deception. Every small joy was a quiet victory. There were moments when memories tried to claw their way back, the dinners, the late-night talks, even the laughter we once shared. But instead of drowning me, those memories became mirrors. They showed me who I had been and who I would never be again. A woman waiting, hoping, shrinking for someone else's love. I had outgrown that version of myself, and when the ache tried to creep in, I met it with gratitude because it reminded me of how far I'd come. One evening, as I stood in front of the mirror before heading out with friends, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Not because she was different on the outside, but because of the fire in her eyes. Stronger, sharper, unafraid. I smiled at my reflection, whispering to myself, "You're finally free." And for the first time, I truly believed it. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to shape, on my terms and no one else's. The spa retreat finally arrived, tucked away in the mountains, where the air smelled of pine and freedom. Wrapped in a soft robe, I lay back and let the warmth of the sauna wash years of tension from my body. For once, there were no buzzing phones, no secrets hiding in plain sight, no lies to unravel. Just me, whole, steady, and finally, at peace. I closed my eyes and let the silence cradle me like a promise of better days ahead. On my last night there, I sat under the stars, the sky stretching wide and endless above me. I thought about how close I'd come to losing myself, how easily I could have stayed trapped in that cycle of betrayal. But instead, I had chosen to fight. Not just for justice, but for myself. The darkness had tried to swallow me, but I'd carved my way out, carrying my dignity like a torch. And now, the night no longer scared me, it inspired me. When I returned home, my friends welcomed me with open arms, laughter spilling into the room as we shared wine and stories. Claire raised her glass high, and I followed suit, my heart swelling with gratitude. "To freedom," she said, her eyes locked with mine. "To freedom," I echoed, the words rolling off my tongue like a victory song. And as the glasses clinked together, I knew the truth. I hadn't just ended a marriage. I had begun a life I truly owned,